Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
You got spend your money. Spend your money, never done. Spend your money. Spend your money.
Good yawning this morning and welcome back to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, your station for fresh news, smart talk all day. It is Wednesday, the 31st of May, 2023, and welcome to Hump Day in the shortest week of the year. Summer vacation has come early. Because of the short week, we've had to attempt to jam all types of different conversations into this one short week, and we just haven't had the opportunity to do it. Today, I was supposed to have representatives from UTEB, the Union for Tertiary Educators in the Bahamas, but our conversation will be disrupted today by the budget communication. And so for those tuning in, please stay tuned. Today is Wednesday. That means it's an on-the-clock Guardian Radio AM man-down mashup Wednesday. But our programming will be disrupted for a short time by the budget communication this morning. We should be switching to that broadcast in roughly 10 minutes. And so our Sand Dollar giveaways, remember we're giving every day 2 winners will receive $30 in Sand Dollars. To be eligible to win, you have to have a digital wallet already enabled. Answer the trivia question correctly. When you call in, give the producer your name and number, your digital wallet provider, and your digital wallet address so we can transfer the funds to your digital wallet if you get the right answer. Our digital wallet giveaways and our Hannah Hasty Tynes Family South giveaway, we're giving away 1 or 2 more tickets for the rest of the week, will take place in the second half of the segment after the budget communication. Good morning, Mr. Nuri. How are you?
Good to be here, Erin. Sorry for being late, but I'm excited about today because we're giving out a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the budget, but I got to wait until the budget comes out. But I listened and heard that it's going to be about security measures in terms of policing and about the economy. So those are good things to listen and embrace.
In fact, you can pick up a copy of today's Nassau Guardian. The headline on the top of the fold is Government Outlines Budget Priorities, PM to deliver new spending plan today. So I want to say to all the people who are very interested in the budget, and for those that aren't, but are now realizing that they need to be, they should be, here's how you can be. One of the government social media pages I found, it was very helpful, is called the website address is bahamasbudget.gov.bs. bahamasbudget.gov.bs. I was able to find the 2019 budget communication, the 2020 budget communication, and I think I found the 2021 budget communication on that website. I think the website needs a bit more work to make it accessible to the average Bahamian, those who may not be as finance literate as many of you are. Mr. Nuri, I want to title today's show, Can You Interpret the Policy Through the Poetry? Yeah. Can you interpret the policy through the poetry. Another great article to read to help you get a sense of what to expect, and that's what I want to talk about just briefly, and then after the actual communication, what do you expect to hear in the budget communication, and what do you expect to see in the budget? So I found this article from the Nassau Guardian, the 24th of February, 2023, that's this year, hopes for a productive budget debate. It's an editorial from the Nassau Guardian, actually. And it starts, for years now, we have witnessed the decline of debate in the House of Assembly, particularly with regard to the budget. Next week, debate will begin in the House on the mid-year budget. That's the 24th of February, 23. It also serves as an opportunity for debate will begin in the House on the mid-year budget, which is supposed to be an account of financial and executive progress for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. It also serves as an opportunity for members of Parliament to examine the ways in which their constituents have been impacted by government policies. Given that every MP on the government side is either in the executive or holds a separate post in government, there should be no shortage of information to divulge, right? And so I'm going to pause there. What to expect? What do you expect to hear? And what do you expect to see? What I expected to hear and see, Mr. Nuri, is more information prior to the budget communication and prior to the beginning of this process. I expected MPs and in their capacity as cabinet ministers or parliamentary secretaries or holding other corporate positions, I expected them to release their speech to the public ahead of time so that the public could read it, right? Making them more prepared to follow along in the conversation and enabling them to make real-time informed critiques and contributions about what they're hearing in the House. That's what I expected to hear and see. And that's what I will always expect to hear and see, because I think that should be the standard, right? That should be the standard, and not that we have to figure out how to tune into the debate and then have to figure out how to find the written statements that were delivered in the House and compare them to what it is we heard in the House. And then, see, the next part is we not just make an assessment of what the MPs and cabinet ministers say, but we also need to weigh what they're saying, each individual is saying, against what the other individuals are saying, so we could determine the validity, right, of their proposals and their suggestions. I expected to hear more engagement from civil society, NGOs and NPOs, non-governmental organizations and non-profit organizations that are focused on finance and economic rights as human rights. I expected them to tell the general public what they should expect to hear, right? I'm hoping that there is some private sector or NGO body that is collecting this data, all of the data necessary, assessing it, collating it, and providing access to it to the Bahamian public. Access that, not just access, but information that they can understand, so they could play a more substantive, they could have a real role and function in governance. These are some of the things I expected to hear. If we follow that article, Hopes for a Productive Budget Debate, the author highlights some of the areas that they expected to hear from or hear about in the mid-year budget, and I think these areas are still on the top of the list for most Bahamians. I'll continue to read from the article. In his delivery of the mid-year budget communication, Prime Minister Philip Davis painted a picture of a roaring economy due to his guidance, with an administration firing on all cylinders. The author says in the area of finance, what is needed are more thorough explanations of expenditure rationale, debt management, and the growing deficit in the face of a surplus projected in 2 years, as promised by the Minister of Economic Affairs. And I think that's the bulk of Bahamians' focus is on that space right there. What is happening with the deficit? What's happening with the national wallet, right? And the national budget. Where do you stand in the face of the projection? I don't want to use the word promise. Promise is too close to poetry. Projection is very close to policy, right? I like that.
I'm listening to you, Erin, and I'm right now contemplating whether the Bahamian people care about this, right? In terms of paying off the national deficit, in terms of details, finding out details about the budget. I find that we just want to know what is being spent, what is going to be spent on, and then we respond in kind to that. So, well, I don't think that should be spent on. I'm hoping that we get a return. I'm interested in hearing what the Prime Minister has to say, right? I know that he prefaced the conversation that it's about national security, right? I don't understand what that means about national security, but I know we hired a number of Defense Force officers again, right? A number of police force officers again. And me, knowing that every so often we get overdraft with paying salaries for civil servants, right? I wonder, will it be more overdrafts, or we have budgeted in that these new people coming in, right? Or should I be concerned about overdrafts in the future? Like, oh, this is a common thing. Don't worry about it. We just borrow the money to pay these people because we continue to be short, right? I am concerned about that.
Right. I get a text here, and good morning texter, regular texter. He says the government always goes over budget. It reminds me of when I send my partner to the food store. She always goes over budget as well. And I thought that was a great point. And I'm not going to make the point, well, you know, politicians are from the people and they're going to behave the same way the people do. That's not the point that I'm going to make. The point that I'm going to make is that politicians can't rely on that, right? That politicians have to be held to a higher standard. Politicians have to figure out how to get it done in the black.
Yeah.
Or in the alternative, where to make cuts.
But you don't want no more cuts.
Yes, I do. I want plenty cuts.
But see, we know where the cutters go.
I mean, they go to BPL, but that's not the type of cut I'm talking about.
Mind you, you're begging for the cuts, and when you cut education and healthcare, you say, well, I didn't mean that.
No.
See what I mean?
I'm very specific. Politician paychecks.
No, but they don't get paid.
They do get paid.
Okay, how much an MP makes? 22,000?
It's too much considering the lack of productivity.
Man. No.
Yes.
I think 22,000 is too little to have a man and woman be dedicated. That breeds corruption.
I think that it's a great test. I think that it's a great test.
You can't be testing with man for their salary.
I think it's a great test. I think that if you telling me that you require a certain amount of money to hold your integrity.
To hold my integrity.
Until you go home and figure out how to hold it by yourself.
But that's all Bahamians straight across the board.
No, it's not all Bahamians.
If you come across a Bahamian and say, don't worry, I have integrity, don't worry about my salary, then I am more concerned about them because that person's a liar.
Well, be concerned about me, not because I'm a liar, but maybe because my head ain't no good. But I'm saying to you,
you know you're one of the Macy's. Your head never good.
Y'all come meet us out at the South. Let's talk about integrity and thing. What I'm saying is that we have to have a standard, and I don't think the standard should be as a politician or a social leader or a government figure, I require a certain amount of money to hold my integrity. And if that is the case, then give up on law and order. Give up on the budget for national security. Give up on all of it because your leaders are setting a precedent. And we could see that precedent has taken root across the country.
And even though we're trying to loosely talk about the budget, and I appreciate this conversation that we have delved into or diverted to, right? Our politicians are a reflection of Bahamians. They are us. The good, the bad, the ugly that you see is the typical Bahamian psyche, right? So if you're saying that our politicians are bad, our politicians is more wanting, that is just a microcosm of what the Bahamas is.
You said that.
Yeah, I'm just saying the Bahamians. Yeah. Bahamians. This is, and remember, I have a sinister, not sinister, a look on our economy, society in general, where when I always conclude, this is as good as it gets. This is the best the Bahamas we'll ever see right now. I don't expect it to get any better than this. I expect as years go on, it gets worse. Right? So now I celebrate this goodness that we're experiencing now.
I want to use a heavy European word, but I'm not sure if I'm using it correctly because I'm not European.
Okay.
Hubris. It's like why do humans think that they are the best that ever was or best that they ever will be? We need to stretch our
Imaginations.
and our egos a bit, right? Just to understand that there could be greater than us. There could be better than us. And I think the charge is that there will not be better unless we get better. It will not be better unless we do the work of preparing the ground for better. Right? I don't want to I don't want to give up.
I can beat you. Recently, two of our premier Bahamians, and again, I put in quotes, as good as it gets, right? Talk about a bygone age idealism. You talking about the future and say where we need to go, and they say talking about the past where we need to go back to. And then there's a disconnect inside the conversation.
There's another massive disconnect that popped up for me just now when you said that. Do you realize what's happened over the last 30, 40 years? Possibly even 50?
Go ahead, what's
But I
happening?
want to say 30, 40. It's as if the pirates have become privateers and buccaneers.
And I hear you, and I embrace that, only because I'm a student of history, and I understand what's your intent in saying.
I mean-
but no, I want to say this first.
Yeah.
What you said needs to be explained because we have a listening audience, right?
Yeah.
And that listening audience need to appreciate your commentary so they can call in and they can say, no, I disagree, or I do agree, or I see it as an enlightenment type thing. So what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, let's start here. You know, every time I see the budget debate unfold, you see it in the newspaper. The day after, you get that picture of the 38,
Yes.
39, 45, 712.
Every so often you
Brave men and women who have to work and live for $22,000 a year.
Yes.
And fight the scourge of corruption as we force them to live in the trenches like regular Bahamians. That's it. But you see them walking across the
street.
square with
Yes.
the red briefcase.
With the red
You know what
briefcase.
in that red briefcase?
What's in the red briefcase?
Treasure.
Treasure inside the red briefcase.
Yes, treasure is inside that red briefcase.
Mm-hmm.
All of the pirates have become privateers and buccaneers. We are now celebrating and heralding and appointing as ambassadors and representatives of this great Commonwealth of the Bahamas people who a couple of decades ago were perceived by the public and the law as not law-abiding people. In fact, we talk about the idealism conversation. Could you imagine that Sir Franklin Wilson would be the first to carry the charge? When I say carry the charge, because he could put weight on it, because he is Frankie Wilson, Sir Frankie Wilson, that the government really has to act quickly and deal with the Quieting of Titles Act? That story was covered in the papers, like a senior man, a statesman, is making such a profound declaration. Sir Frankie Wilson, Quieting of Titles Act.
Yeah.
All of the pirates have become privateers and buccaneers.
I know what you're trying to suggest, or double talking, but I appreciate the point. I'm going to put a historical context, right?
Yeah.
We know that pirates are bad.
What?
Pirates are bad.
Listen, I got to...
They plunder and they kill and destroy for profit, right? But we know
Those
that
are profiteers, which is very close to privateers. In fact, the spelling, I mean, in some regions the pronunciation is the same.
I'm trying to give the context.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, my
and we
bad,
know
my
and we
bad.
know that privateers is hired by the state.
Yes.
They work for the state for the benefit of the state, even if they do plunder and rape and
Yeah.
pillage, right? But it's for the benefit of the state, the benefit of the country,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you mentioned buccaneers. Buccaneers is another term meaning that you only attack a specific group of people. Even though it's the benefit of you, you let everyone else survive, all right, or your own people thrive, but the enemies of the state you tend to attack. So when you say that the pirates have become buccaneers and privateers, it's something that is worth investigating and having a thesis on. Our University of the Bahamas should investigate such. Our intellectuals should investigate stuff and put it forward to the Bahamian people so they can understand exactly what we're dealing with. Why there's frustration by a number of people. Why do we approach the budget the way we do, where people say, okay, this is seem old, right? Where persons like me who's cynical, that's the word I was looking for, who say, man, I just want to see the numbers, right? You talking about poetry and want to read it beforehand and then and want fixed things. And I said, man, I just want to see the numbers to see how I benefit. And if I benefit from it, then I say, good. I don't want to hear the background of who's suffering later on. I just want to know if I benefit. And I don't even necessarily want to know who winning in terms of, say, boy, I want to get that contract, right? I just want to say, how do the majority of us benefit from such a budget?
Absolutely. Producer, I see that caller on the line. Could you prepare them to come up, caller? The budget communication could start at any moment now. Oh, they're gone. My apologies. I had a trivia question for today. I'm going to find a new one because I want to use this one right now. You let me know when you're ready to go.
Good,
producer.
But
okay.
I didn't warn you, but I just got a text that we may have to push the questions quicker in order to prepare for the next show afterwards. We have a guest coming in too.
Oh, for 12 o'clock.
For 11.
Oh, we got a guest coming in for 11. I got you. That's the budget debate starting.
Okay.
People, please stay tuned. And keep your dial on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM.
Yeah.
The conversation will continue after the budget communication.
Represent our fellow Bahamians in this parliament as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of independence of our Commonwealth. My government heeds well the rallying cry of this year's celebrations, that we should do all that we can to lift up our one nation, do all that we can to cherish and promote our legacy, and we work tirelessly to secure our future. As with all national budgets, this second budget of my administration is the best expression of the intentions of the government.
Yes.
Woven among the various facts and figures are the priorities and choices we are making in order to continue to make life better for Bahamians. But they also contain an expression of our values to move closer to fulfilling the ambition and promise of independence, to put people first by ensuring that economic activity is not just a series of metrics, but instead driven by the very human needs for dignity and justice.
Yes.
And to ensure that the state government, in its drive for efficiency and effectiveness, does not lose its ability also to act as a good Samaritan. Madam Speaker, as I've said before, that it remains my privilege and the privilege of my life to represent the people of Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador, and to lead a government which continues to work hard to fulfill its promise to bring a new day to the people of the Bahamas. Last year, we presented a budget that charted the way forward for our country. That budget was a key stepping stone towards fulfilling the plan which we have to recover, to rebuild, and ultimately to revolutionize our country. As honorable members will soon hear, we have made strong progress, and the public finances are much, much healthier than they were. Madam Speaker, the success is not just ours. The success is not just ours, but that of the Bahamian people. And to all of them, I say thank you. By working in partnership to revive our economy, together we are forging a new course for our beloved Bahamas, and all our futures will be brighter for it. And so this year, we are able to introduce a number of additional short-term goals that not only address the immediate needs and opportunities we face, but continue to build towards a better future for everyone. After the turbulence and chaos of the preceding years, the natural disasters, the constitutional aberrations, and gross mismanagement of the public finances, we think it critical to do what we can to ensure greater security and stability in our country. And so, Madam Speaker, today we present a budget that has at its heart the mission to strengthen national security, economic security, and the lives and livelihoods of the people of the Bahamas. This budget communication is set out in three parts. First, as is customary, it will report on the microeconomic conditions to provide some context for what we propose. Next, I will highlight some of the key measures in this year's budget. Finally, I will offer a summary discussion of the economic and fiscal challenges and opportunities covered in the development of this budget, as well as the policy strategies that have been developed to address them. However, given our country's very close interconnectedness with the wider global economy, it is essential to consider first the wider economic climate in this discussion, to which I now turn. According to the International Monetary Fund, as stated in their April 2023 World Economic Outlook, the world experienced growth in real GDP of 3.4% in 2022. That was down from the post-COVID recovery rate of 6.3% in 2021. However, global inflation reached 8.7% last year, well above the generally desired target rates of inflation. The world economy is slowly recovering from the devastating impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The resulting disruptions in supply chains are resolving, and energy and food markets are stabilizing after being severely impacted by the Russia-Ukraine war. Additionally, many central banks have implemented restrictive monetary policies, which are expected to help bring inflation levels back to their desired targets over time. Overall, the global economy is showing signs of improvement, although there is still much work to be done to fully recover from the recent challenges. Real GDP growth for the Bahamas' major trading partner, the United States, expanded by 2.1% in 2022, down from 5.9% in 2021. As with the global economy, the outlook for the U.S. economy remains uncertain with a key factor in the outlook being the nexus between monetary policy and the rate of inflation. Average consumer prices in the United States rose by 8% in 2022, and with a target rate of 2%. The Federal Reserve responded with an ongoing restrictive monetary policy stance. Over the past year, the policy rate of interest has been raised 10 times, the latest rise taking place earlier this month, driven primarily by rising inflation and reaction shocks. Recent hikes in U.S. interest rates continue to have a pernicious effect on the Bahamas in terms of higher borrowing costs. These spillovers exacerbate debt burdens via higher interest rates, which can make financing debt repayments more difficult. Nevertheless, the projected rate of real GDP growth in the U.S., as projected by the IMF, has declined to 1.6% in 2023. Perhaps paradoxically, the rate of unemployment has remained at a 50-year low levels in the 3.5% range in the United States, and the projected rate of consumer price inflation at 4.5% in 2023. This all remains above the Federal Reserve's target. Uncertainty about the future path of the U.S. economy still remains high. Madam Speaker, on the other side of the world, China has been rebounding strongly following the reopening of its economy, with real GDP growth equating to 3% in 2022, and is projected by the IMF at 5.2% in 2023. Compared to the previous year, consumer prices in China rose with a 0.1% increase in February 2023 and 0.7% increase in March 2023. On an annual basis, inflation is forecast to remain relatively low in the range of 2%. According to the National Bureau of Statistics of China, in a press release titled "National Economy Showed a Steady Recovery in the First 2 months," policy decisions in China were focused on promoting lasting development with priority on ensuring stable growth, employment, and prices. According to the release, production and demand improved significantly. Employment and prices were generally stable, and market expectations saw accelerated improvement, all attributed to policy decisions. In the Euro area, which refers to the member countries of the European Union who have adopted the euro as their currency, real GDP growth was 3.5% in 2022, down from 5.4% in 2021. The annual inflation rate in the euro area was 6.9% in March 2023, down from 9.2% in December 2022. The euro area unemployment rate has remained relatively stable to date, tempering slightly to 6.5% at the end of March 2023. As with the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank has maintained a restrictive monetary policy stance targeted on further reductions in rate inflation. This inevitably weighs on the buoyancy of the euro economy, which is projected by the IMF to expand in real terms by 0.8% in 2023. Madam Speaker, amidst the current uncertain and challenging economic climate on the global stage, the IMF has projected a 2.8% growth for the world economy in 2023, with a modest increase to 3% in 2024. Although inflation is expected to decrease, the rate at which it will do so is still slower than initially predicted, with a decline from 7% in 2023 to 4.9% in 2024. This will continue to pose a challenge for policy authorities in the major economies. That is the general outlook of the global market, global economy, and touching the two major economies, the US and China. And it does have influence on what happens in this jurisdiction, hence the context. And in nominal terms, it grew by 11.9%. This outcome indicates the ongoing and significant improvement from the economic ravages imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The boom in the Bahamas has continued as businesses recover and many continue to grow. Many industries in this country recorded modest gains in 2022 when compared to the previous years. I am convinced the government's fiscal policy, namely the reduction of VAT coupled with other reductions in customs duties and excise taxes, contributed significantly to the economic growth. Other elements which contributed to growth included the digitalization of government services, especially the granting of concessions and legislative reforms. These measures have also facilitated the ease of conducting business in the country. Further, total visitor arrivals increased considerably, with increased spending in the economy by tourists. The effect of this increased spending by tourists was a noticeable rise in various components of household expenditure in 2022. Household expenditure in 2022 grew by 7%. Madam Speaker, a more detailed examination of the nominal GDP, which analyzes the economic performance of individual islands, can provide more insight. While some islands saw growth, others experienced a contraction during the period. The latest GDP statistics for New Providence paint a promising picture. It is important to highlight that New Providence contributes 78% of the Bahamas' total GDP. In 2022, New Providence experienced a significant increase in GDP of 17%, largely due to a boost in tourism. The accommodation and food service sectors were the leading force behind this growth, with real estate activities coming in a close second. This impressive performance has successfully restored the island's economy to its pre-pandemic state. In 2022, the combined GDP of Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador experienced a remarkable growth of 39%. Compared to the previous year. Although these islands only make up a small fraction of the Bahamas' economy, accounting for 0.4% of the total, their growth is still noteworthy and supports the government's very aggressive and successful effort to have reopened Club Med and San Salvador.
Yes.
In 2022, Exuma also played a crucial role in boosting the overall GDP of the Bahamas, contributing 2.1% to the country's economic growth. Exuma experienced a significant growth of 33% in its GDP compared to the previous year, which was largely attributed to the increase in tourist arrivals. The tourism industry played a pivotal role in Exuma's economic progress, allowing the island to surpass its pre-pandemic levels and achieve significant growth. From 2015 to 2022, the island of Andros consistently accounted for 1% of the Bahamas' total GDP. However, in 2022, the island's GDP reached its highest level in an 8-year period. Andros experienced a significant economic growth of 6.2% in 2022. With real estate activities being the primary contributor. Bimini and the Berry Islands contributed 1.4% to the Bahamas' total GDP. Despite the downturn in 2020, with the GDP dropping to almost 1/3 of its usual level, these islands have consistently maintained a strong economic performance from 2015 to 2022. Notably, in 2022, they witnessed a remarkable growth of 59% in their industries. Surpassing the growth year of the previous year. This suggests that Bimini and the Berry Islands are poised to continue their upward trajectory and continue to make contributions to the overall economic growth of the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, despite these gains, the data also revealed that other islands fared less well. In 2022, Abaco's GDP saw a decline of 6%. Its contribution to the Bahamian economy was 2.8%. Despite this, Abaco still ranked as the third largest island contributor to the country's overall economy. While there was a slight improvement in Abaco's economy compared to 2019, it has yet to reach the level seen before Hurricane Dorian. The decline in economic activity is directly related to the slowdown in real estate and construction sectors. Declines in the real estate sector are directly as a result of a shift to higher intermediate consumption in 2022 from that of the previous 2 years. In terms of declines in construction, it should be noted that in 2020 and 2021, Abaco experienced significant recovery efforts in the form of debris removal, site preparation, and rebuilding of damaged structures. Such efforts boosted the value added to the island's GDP during those years. As those efforts wrap up, the industry saw a gradual decline as construction tempered to normal levels in 2022, resulting in this lower GDP. Madam Speaker, Grand Bahama. Grand Bahama contributes 12% of the overall GDP of the Bahamas. Yet its economy declined by 9% compared to the previous year. There was a silver lining as the tourism sector witnessed a slight increase in 2022, which was evident in the growth of the accommodation and food and services industries. Unfortunately, the statistics show a prolonged decline in the Grand Bahamian economy. The evidence confirms the view of my government that the Hawksbill Creek Agreement economic model, which is meant to attract foreign direct investment, does not work. Furthermore, in our view, the governance model of the Grand Bahama Port Authority must change.
Yes, East Grand Bahama. We see you.
The Hawksbill Creek Agreement does not work.
Come with us.
The Port Authority must change in order to realize the promise, growth, and prosperity which we all desire. Additionally, the government of the Bahamas has serious concerns regarding the Port Authority and its related companies with the terms and conditions of the Hawksbill Creek Act and its subsequent amendments. Previous administrations have made efforts to tackle the situation, but the issue is clearly systemic and fundamental. We believe, Madam Speaker, the time has come for decisive action. In due course, we will make a separate detailed announcement, and it may be during the course of the debate. Madam Speaker, the consistent decline in GDP faced by the Make-Warner, Acklands, Crooked Island, and Inago Group continued in 2022, with an 11% reduction when compared in 2021. The overall decline in this group is owing to the continued headwinds facing various industries, mainly salt harvesting. Lutra's contribution to the Bahamas GDP has remained steady at 2.6% from 2015 to 2022. However, in 2022, there was a decline of 1.3% in Lutra's GDP, attributed primarily to decreases in several key industry groups, including agriculture and fishing, wholesale and retail trade, motor vehicle repairs, and transport and storage. Long Island's economy made a contribution of 0.54% to the overall economy. Although the island's GDP experienced a contraction of 10% compared to the previous year, there was still growth in segments fueled by tourism, including accommodation and food services, as well as household employment. Madam Speaker, I now report on the domestic, economic, and monetary performance of the Bahamian economy for the period ending March 23, 2023. During the first 9 months of the current fiscal year, economic conditions remain stable with strong stopover arrivals during the period. Persistent interest from tourists brought the count of total arrivals for the fiscal year 2022-2023 to 6.6 million visitors. That is at the end of March. There were 1.2 million arrivals by air, 5.4 million arrivals by sea. As I indicated, that total relates to the end of March. So they're still counting. Exoma. They're still counting. In respect of the vacation rental industry, the statistics provided by Air DNA confirm the favorable improvement in tourism. At the end of March, the data revealed that the average occupancy rate for entire unit listings had risen to 69.8%, an increase from 61%, recorded in the corresponding period in 2022. Similarly, for comparable hotel listings, the average occupancy rate has increased to 65.1%, up from 55.2% in the previous year. These figures underscore the upward trend in the vacation rental market and provide compelling evidence of its profitability. An ongoing stream of new foreign investment projects is currently underway, featuring a diverse range of ventures in New Providence, Exuma, Abaco, Long Island, Eleuthera, and Cat Island. With the continual expansion of tourism and foreign direct investment, we can expect to witness an increase in entrepreneurial opportunities and job creation within these sectors. Madam Speaker, according to the Bahamas National Statistics Institute, consumer prices in January 2023 saw a slight dip of 0.1% compared to December in 2022. This decline was primarily influenced by a reduction of 1.3% in food and non-alcoholic beverages. In February 2023, consumer prices again decreased by 0.1% compared to the previous month, with a decline of 1.1% in food and non-alcoholic beverages, and a 3.4% in miscellaneous goods being the major contributor. In this context, I would highlight that the ongoing enhancements in operations and processes at the Consumer Affairs Unit, the regulating body for price control in the Bahamas, act as a key reason for the moderation of price inflation. We have a new consumer protection bill that was laid in Parliament to be debated shortly. I have already hired additional price control inspectors in New Providence and Family Islands. And in addition, we have committed additional training and resources to the department to further address the cost of living. Madam Speaker, a review of other key economic indicators show that monetary conditions in the Bahamas remain favorable and support stability in our exchange rate. External reserves grew by $76.9 million over the quarter to the end of March 2023 and total $2.7 billion. This growth, Madam Speaker, and it's significant to note, this growth is primarily due to economic activity rather than foreign currency borrowings. This is notably lower than the previous year growth of $513 million, which included proceeds from government's external borrowings. During the 3 months to March 2023, bank liquidity reflected moderate growth. For the period, the reduction in Bahamian dollar credit eased, and commercial and other lending continued to rise. In the external sector, the current account deficit narrowed at the end of 2022. This was mainly attributed to the growth in the services account surplus, which is further supported by the continuing rise in the revenue generated from the tourism industry. In line with the projected global and U.S. economic developments, real GDP growth in the Bahamas in 2023 is expected to maintain the momentum that emerged in the post-pandemic period. As elsewhere, real growth this year is projected to settle in at somewhere more moderate levels in the range of 4.3%. And we think that's great. This reflects the very strong rebound that has already been experienced, but still remains at a level that is healthy by historical standards. I now turn to a review of the fiscal performance during the first 3 quarters of the 2022-2023 fiscal year. That is from July 2022 to the end of March 2023. I will first consider the position concerning revenue. Total revenue amounted to $2.1 billion for the first 9 months of the fiscal year 2022-2023. This represents an increase of $267.2 million or 14.5% when compared to the previous year. To date, our total revenue stands at 73.9% of the budget forecast after 9 months, only 9 months. To more properly assess the magnitude of this improvement, it can be compared to the performance in the fiscal year 2018 to 2019, the last normal year before the pandemic. In this earlier period, total revenue collected during the first 9 months of the fiscal year accounted for only 63.7% of the budget forecast. Speaks for itself. Improved performance in respect of total revenue was supported by a period-over-period increase of $291.3 million in tax revenue, which totaled $1.8 million during the period. Now, the period I'm talking about is 9 months. To date, tax revenue accounts for 72.9% of the budget forecast. Again, for the sake of comparison, tax revenue collected during the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year 2018-2019 represented only 62.6% of the budget then forecasted. The following key points concerning the revenue are noteworthy. Taxes collected on property grew by $24.3 million and total $130.7 million, which represents 77.1% of the budget target. This is in line with collection trends, as majority of property taxes are paid in the second half of the fiscal year. VAT receipts improved by $112.4 million and amounted to $947.5 million, representing 67.1% of the budget target. This enhanced collection of value-added tax is due to a better economic climate compared to the previous year, as well as the efforts of the reconstituted Revenue Enhancement Unit. Stamp. Someone called me the chief tax collector. Stamp taxes on financial transactions and VAT on real estate transactions grew by $28.8 million and totaled $80.5 million, which has surpassed the budget forecast by 16.3% or $11.3 million. Gaming taxes grew by $11.8 million to a level of $49.2 million and represents a 93.4% of the budget forecast at the 9-month mark. Licenses to conduct special business activity, which comprise specific business licenses and communication levies, increased by $8.1 million and total $89.1 million. To date, this represents 68.2% of the budget forecast. Taxes on international trade and transactions increased by $151.4 million and total $498 million. This category's strong performance, which represents 80.8% of the budget forecast, can be primarily attributed to the following factors. Departure tax collections increased by $80 million and total $128.6 million, which has surpassed the budget forecast by 32.6% or $31.6 million. excise duties firmed by 63.5 million and total 180.1 million, reflecting 66.8% of the budget forecast. Customs and other import duties improved by $7.8 million and total $188.8 million for 75.6% of the budget. Madam Speaker, I would like to take this time to, again, as I did when I opened, to thank the Bahamian people, the public, business community, for their cooperation in acknowledging their responsibility. If they were not doing so, we would not be doing so well. And revenue agencies for their efforts in working with the Bahamian public. Madam Speaker, I will now review the position concerning expenditure. Total expenditure increased by $145.3 million to a total of $2.3 billion during the first 9 months of the fiscal year. This accounts for 67.8% of the budget target. In the revenue expenditure component, spending increased by $111.6 million to a total $2.1 billion, which accounts for 69.4% of the budget forecast. Spending on compensation of employees increased by $55.7 million to total $594 million, representing 71.7% of the budget targeted. In this regard, it is important to note the recent developments in labor policies that have brought about positive changes for public sector workers in the Bahamas. Madam Speaker, these include an increase in the public sector minimum wage from $210 to $260 per week. As well as industrial agreements that have been signed with various unions. For instance, the Ministry of Education, Technical and Vocational Training, in collaboration with its 3 unions, has implemented a retention bonus scheme and awarded salary increases and increments for teachers and administrators. Similarly, the Bahamas Nurses Union successfully negotiated with the government to secure a retention bonus and other benefits for nurses. Yes. This is designed to curb the drain to our neighbors to the north, who have been poaching our teachers and nurses. Yeah. In addition, public officers, such as police officers, defense force officers, and other orderly officers, received a salary adjustment in December 2022, retroactive to July 1st, 2022. These developments, Madam Speaker, signify a significant step towards offering equitable compensation for those who serve the public in the Bahamas. Looking now to other categories of spending, public debt interest payments increased by $58 million to a total of $391.8 million and amounted to 70% of the budget forecast. Payments on foreign currency obligations total $197.2 million, or 50.3%, while payments on our domestic debt obligations total $194.6 million, or 49.7% of targeted numbers. As a result of the tightening in global monetary policy, the average cost of borrowing in foreign currency has risen over the past 9 months. Spending on the use of goods and services, that increased by $29 million to a total of $432 million. To date, this accounts for 64.1% of the budget forecast. Current transfers, not elsewhere classified, increased by $33.1 million and total $163.3 million, or 63.9% of the budget forecast. Beyond these increases in expenditure, a few categories of spending experienced reductions. Government subsidies narrowed by $20.9 million and total $330.4 million. This equals 76.4% of the budget forecast. Government's COVID-19 recurrent expenditure measures over the 9 months of this fiscal year total $6.2 million. This represents a 94.4% decrease compared to the $96.6 million distributed at the end of June 2022. In respect of capital expenditure, during the first 3 quarters, spending increased by $33.7 million, totaling $193.9 million, which accounts for 54% of the budget forecast. Expenditure on the acquisition of non-financial assets increased by $42.4 million and total $167.4 million, which represents 63.4% of the budget forecast. This increase was the result of the following items of expenditure. Investments in buildings other than dwellings increased by $31.2 million and totaled $83.4 million, which accounts for 68.1% of budget forecast. This mainly reflected high expenditure on upgrades and maintenance of government buildings, construction and repair of schools, and upkeep of the community. Expenditure on transport equipment increased by $3.4 million and totaled $5.7 million, which represents a 49.3% of budget forecast. This was primarily owing to higher outlays for military vessel maintenance and motor vehicles. Outlays for other structures increased by $7.3 million, totaling $53 million, which represents 59.2% of budget forecast. During the period, further investments were made towards New Providence roadwork. Land improvement expenditures increased by $1.2 million to total $4.9 million, which accounts for 81.4% of budget. This was mainly attributed to parks and ground improvements. Capital transfers declined by $8.5 million and total $26.6 million, representing 28% of the budget forecast. The decrease in transfers can be attributed to the gradual decrease in COVID-19 and Hurricane Dorian support provisions. Madam Speaker, central government's fiscal performance for the first 9 months of the fiscal year show a deficit of $216.2 million, which accounts for 1.6% of nominal GDP. This deficit equates to 37.6% of the budget targeted. Compared to the previous year, the deficit to date represents a decrease of $120.1 million from the deficit of $336.3 million in the same period of that same year, prior year. Deficit in the previous year accounted for 2.7% of nominal GDP. And so, Madam Speaker, the deficit is heading in the right direction, down. At the end of March, the primary balance reflected a surplus equating to $175.6 million, a striking improvement from the primary deficit of $2.4 million in the previous year. The primary surplus experienced in the first 9 months of fiscal year 2022-2023 greatly exceeded the targeted $25 million set in the draft estimates of revenue and expenditure, as well as the $4 million deficit projected in the 2022 fiscal strategy report. The sizable surplus signifies that primary government spending, that is public spending, excluding interest payments, is less than revenue collection. Just to understand that, repeat it, the sizable surplus signifies that primary government spending, which is public spending excluding interest payments, is less than revenue collection. A long time. A continued primary surplus is essential to the target of achieving a balanced budget by fiscal year 2024-2025 and reducing the burden of central debt over the medium term. As a result of net borrowing activities, central government net debt increased over the 9 months by $290.8 million to an overall total debt of $11.1 billion. At the end of March 2023, domestic currency debt accounted for $5.9 billion, or 53.4% of total central government debt. Foreign currency debt accounted for $5.2 billion, or 46.6% of total central government debt. As I mentioned earlier, over the period, the debt to GDP ratio has been trending downward. At the end of June 2022, the end of the previous fiscal year, the debt stock was equal to 87.3% of GDP. However, at the end of March 2023, the end of the third quarter of the current fiscal year, the debt stock equaled 83.5% of GDP, which represents a 4.4% decline from the end of June 2022. Now we will not mention where we bought it from, because you will say that's controversial. But in June 2021, it was over 100. Our debt, the GDP ratio was over 100, man. Unsustainable. Unsustainable. And we now have it to 83.5%. And it's continuing to go down. As I mentioned, public revenue receipts were strong over the previous 9-month period. This was due to legislative reform, effective policy decisions, strengthened economic conditions, and more efficient collection efforts. Analysis of the trends of the first 3 quarters of this fiscal year and the years prior suggests that the government is potentially set to exceed the $2.85 billion target set forth in the February 2023 mid-year supplementary budget. I am confident that the revenue outturn at the end of the fiscal year 2022-2023 will near $2.9 billion. Public spending, Madam Speaker, has remained on track and is well within the budgeted amount. For this reason, I am confident equally that expenditure at the end of the fiscal year 2022-2023 will almost reach the target of $3.1 billion set in this. Trying to stay on target. This will be the first time in a long time. Long time. And we'll talk more about this during the course of the debate. The primary balance will therefore record a surplus of $68.4 million at the end of the fiscal year, a $54.8 million increase from the $13.6 million surplus that was projected in supplementary budget. Likewise, Likewise, the overall deficit is expected to improve to $520.6 million, down from the $575.4 million outlined in the supplementary budget. So we are holding the reins. Madam Speaker, I'll now shift our focus to the subject of government financing. You know, the Bahamas' borrowing costs had begun to experience a downward trend in the previous quarter, but the cost of borrowing rose at the end of March 2023. At the end of the third quarter, the total average cost of borrowing for current outstanding debt had risen to an interest rate of 5.5%. This is notably higher than the previous year's rate of 4.93% at the end of March 2022. This increase in borrowing costs is primarily attributable to the higher costs associated with external loan facilities. More specifically, the average interest rate for external financing has risen by 1.99 basis points, resulting in a rate of 5.5% as of March, as I mentioned, compared to the preceding year's 3.56%. Throughout the past year, the interest rate policies of major central banks have been restrictive, as I've mentioned, with a series of interest rate increases. These adjustments have been primarily motivated by the escalation of inflation, and the resulting upsurge in interest rates has had an impact on the Bahamas' external borrowing costs. However, the cost of borrowings in the domestic market has been declining over the past quarters. Looking at it in more detail, we can see that the average interest costs for domestic loans subsided by 27 basis points to 4.62% at the end of March 2023, from 4.89% in the previous year. And the average interest costs for domestic bonds subsided by 3 basis points to 4.63% at the end of March 2023 from 4.66% in the previous year. These statistics affirm the government's latest medium-term debt strategy, which aims to shift its borrowing away from costly external commercial debt. Such debt has seen a sharp increase over the past 5 years, including recent interest rate hikes. This strategic move will enable the government to once again rely predominantly on the domestic market to meet its financing requirements. Madam Speaker, when considering the maturity of debt, or the average time it takes to repay the principal amount in the government's debt portfolio, a longer maturity period leads to a reduction in refinancing risk. In essence, prioritizing longer maturities is key to managing debt effectively. And so another element of the government's medium-term debt strategy is the goal of prolonging the average maturity time of its debt. In the face of unprecedented turbulence in the global financial markets, the government was able to maintain its average time to maturity. At the end of March 2023, the average time to maturity has decreased slightly to 6.7 years, down from the previous 6.8 years in March 2022. This variance is due solely to the external loan component, as the average time to maturity on internal debt has remained steady at 7.1 years. This highlights the significance of maintaining a prudent approach to debt management and aligning this administration's practices with government's optimal debt strategy. It is imperative that we continue to exercise prudence in this area to ensure financial stability. Speaker, in our view, the Bahamas has the potential to expand the domestic government securities market and reduce its dependence on external borrowing. This shift towards higher domestic financing could provide a more sustainable and stable source of funding for the country's needs. In order to assist with the development of the government securities market in the Bahamas, a team from the International Monetary Fund conducted a technical assistance mission in March 2023. During their visit, they evaluated the current state of the country's sovereign debt market and provided suggestions for improvement. These recommendations were focused on three main areas: the primary market, cash management, and investors' relations management. The IMF team suggested implementing a more structured approach to these areas in order to facilitate growth and success in the local currency government bond market. In line with this approach, there are a number of initiatives, goals being planned for the strategic expansion of the local capital market. The rollout of the Bahamas Government Securities Depository in January 2023 was the first and most fundamental milestone in this process. Building on this modern infrastructure, the central bank and the Bahamas International Securities Exchange finalized a direct connection between the trading system and the BGSD, the Bahamas government bonds, in May 2023. The direct and automated settlement of the government security strengthens the efficiency and the secondary market. Looking ahead, the BGSD will roll out competitive bidding for primary market Bahamas registered stock issuances early in the fiscal year, thereby allowing the market to price government bond issues. This initiative will enhance price transparency, allow for the development of a true domestic yield curve, while at the same time strengthening the local bond market. In terms of policy reform, a significant step forward will be to promote and encourage an increase in the level of government securities held by regulated and unregulated businesses. Therefore, in this budget, the government is removing any tax on the interest income that a business would otherwise incur by holding any type of government securities. In addition, there will be the formulation of a master repurchase agreement for government securities. This initiative will add agility to the local bond market and better bolster central bank monetary policy operations. In the long term, the government will seek to implement buybacks and switches to standardize and increase the depth of securities trading across the secondary market. Madam Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic and the poor policy response by the government of the day, along with the wasteful public borrowing which accompanied it, led to the historically high debt levels for the Bahamas. So, notwithstanding the fact that the micro fiscal performance has now improved, the overhang of debt has been a significant factor in credit rating actions during this period. Therefore, in October 2022, Moody's Investor Services downgraded the Bahamas credit ratings from Ba3 to B1, largely due to the unsustainable rise in debt undertaken by the previous administration. However, the outlook was revised upwards to stable, reflecting Moody's confidence in our strategies. Yes. Confidence was also buoyed by the early harvest, which include the recovery of our tourism-driven economy and a reduction in the fiscal deficit. So in November 2022, S&P Global Ratings affirmed the Bahamas credit rating at B+ with a stable outlook, citing positive economic growth and overall confidence in this administration's strategy, which is reducing the fiscal debt and showing the growth of government debt and slowing. Let me repeat that, and slowing the growth of government debt. Madam Speaker, the Inter-American Development Bank and the Caribbean Development Bank are the primary development partners for the government. Both institutions have provided considerable and invaluable support since the COVID-19 pandemic. Multilateral financial institutions offer a comparatively lower cost source of financing for the government when compared to commercial borrowing. Madam Speaker, the CDB, Caribbean Development Bank, has a portfolio of 7 loans valued at $111.4 million. And the IDB has a portfolio of 23 loans valued at $836.6 million. In addition, the government is presently seeking IDB board approval for 2 policy-based guarantee instruments, which will allow access to market financing at even more favorable rates. These guarantees will support the government's debt management operations during the upcoming 2023-2024 fiscal year, which also contemplates a debt for nature swap. A debt for nature swap is an arrangement whereby a developing nation such as ours can have a portion of foreign debt forgiven, typically in exchange for committing to specific conservation measures. Several key features of the guarantee are worth noting. It will contribute to the reduction in the cost of the guaranteed debt issued by the government and also include a policy matrix determined by the Ministry of Finance in conjunction with the IDB. A key component of the government's fiscal strategy is to use access to the CDB and IDB financing to lower our overall funding cost by leveraging the institution's AAA credit rating. Reduced borrowing costs and improved debt tenor are tools which should improve the overall debt profile of the nation. Madam Speaker, this survey of the macroeconomic conditions affecting the Bahamian economy offers a clear context of the conditions under which the budget has been constructed. I turn now to part 2 of this communication. I will outline the key fiscal policy measures within this budget. This will include the revenue and expenditure measures reflecting the government's priorities in respect of national security, economic security, and in securing the lives and livelihoods of the Bahamian people. In addition to the measures outlined today, further details and a greater scope of other policy priorities will be addressed during our second reading. National security. National security remains the number 1 priority for every country in the world. Governments have a primary duty to defend their borders and to keep their people safe. And so it is here in the Bahamas. The immigration plan, which we launched a few months ago to strengthen our security at the border, is now bearing fruit. The international partnerships we have secured and fortified have led to a reduction in illegal immigration. We will continue to strengthen our approach by providing 4 new vessels to the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and continue implementation of our immigration plan, Operation Secure Restore. In recognition of the service which our Defense Force personnel give, we are providing enhanced allowances for seagoing and technical personnel for the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. This budget also provides funding for a new shantytown task force. This is a new line item of expenditure to support the demolition of illegal and unregulated communities. Looking firmly within our borders, Madam Speaker, when asked, many Bahamians cite crime or the fear of crime as one of their main concerns. A few months ago, I visited, along with the Minister of Education, the S.C. McPherson Junior High School. And I invited children to ask me questions. Many of the questions from these fine young people related to crime. Their anxiety is hardly surprising, given the reports and images of violence which unfortunately have become part of our daily lives. The fact that so much of violent crime is gang-related does not mean that we should care any less about such senseless waste of life. Madam Speaker, I want our Bahamian children to grow up without these fears. I want them to dream big. But if a child is worried about the safety of a brother, a friend, a cousin, or if a child is worried about his own safety, it is hard to ask him to expand his ambitions. Fear can be a powerful inhibitor, a formidable obstacle to achieving one's full potential. This limiting of dreams might not show up in official statistics, but I see it in the faces of children who should be enjoying carefree childhoods, but who instead have already known too much fear and apprehension. For our beautiful, extraordinary children, for all of our people, we are determined to make the Bahamas safer. We have launched, Madam Speaker, a number of initiatives to reduce crime. The results so far, although promising, are not coming as quickly as any of us would like. Poverty, despair, and violence have deep roots. We have expanded the urban renewal program. We have recruited hundreds of new police, defense force, correctional and immigration officers. We've also increased funding for police saturation patrols and recruitment of new officers. To assist these officers in their work, we've already acquired 150 vehicles, including 100 dual cab trucks and 50 motorcycles. As part of our commitment to rehabilitating offenders so that they may become better citizens once they are released, we have increased funding for the Second Chance program to reduce recidivism, or in other words, reduce the likelihood of a return to criminal activity. Madam Speaker, in this budget, I'm pleased to announce that we are implementing an even more comprehensive approach to fighting crime. This covers a full range of interventions, including prevention, detection, prosecution, punishment, and rehabilitation. Funding will be provided for the renovation of community centers in the inner city areas of New Providence. In order to better serve those involved in the administration of justice, the premises and facilities of the courts will be renovated and a new judicial complex built. Yes. We will continue to invest in technology such as CCTV and body cams for the Royal Bahamas Police Force, as well as acquire additional vehicles and hire more new staff. We have allocated funding to build a women's shelter, and we are increasing legal aid support for victims of domestic violence. both within the social services framework and with a victim care fund within the Office of the Judiciary. My government is fully committed to fighting crime, fighting the causes of crime, and increasing support for victims of domestic violent crime. Before I move on, Madam Speaker, I wish to offer a brief thought about an aspect of national security, which I believe may, in time, grow into a cause for concern. Madam Speaker, I wish to make clear how much I deplore and condemn efforts by some in our country to weaponize issues around national security for their own political and financial benefit. Violent and often racist language, abusive invective, and dehumanization have no place in our society. As many of us were once, and some still, on the receiving end of this kind of talk. This is the kind of history we should have put firmly behind us. You know, we are all God's children. And it said we made in his image. And it said we're worthy of his grace. Yes, we must and we will defend our borders. Yes, we must and we will uphold our laws. But we can and must reject poison, and we must reject hatred. I'll leave it there for now, Madam Speaker. When I spoke earlier of the turbulence and chaos of recent years, I referred to the experience of many Bahamians for whom the passage of Hurricane Dorian and the shutdown associated with the COVID-19 pandemic introduced degrees of economic uncertainty they had never known. Some people lost their homes, others slept in cars, some struggled to find regular meals to feed their family, while others struggled to provide the most basic level of financial support for their loved ones. We do not forget those dark times, but it strengthens our resolve to build an economy which is ready not only to weather economic storms, but is also sufficiently resilient to move us closer to the ideals of economic justice and dignity. If we can build economic security, then Bahamians can have more confidence that the economy works for them and have even greater confidence in planning their own future once they believe that the economy is working for them. Investment is obviously a cornerstone of activity, and so we will continue to seek to attract increased foreign and domestic investment. We especially want to encourage greater participation by Bahamians in the economy by promoting Bahamian ownership through support for small and medium-sized enterprises. This government, Madam Speaker, has set a number of medium-term budgetary targets and has committed to diligent and prudent financial management. Moreover, we plan to utilize innovative financing methods through effective public-private partnerships. A key focus will be to generate more revenue for the public purse without raising taxes. This means no increase in VAT. No increase on customs duties. Excise duty. Tax rates. Or real property tax rates. We will instead increase revenue collection by improving tax compliance and enforcement. This is based on a simple principle of fairness. Most people pay their taxes. Why should some people be allowed not to? If people are experiencing hardship, or if there are other extenuating circumstances, we invite people to come and talk with us. We usually come up with some form of agreement to allow them to live and continue in business. But there's a responsibility on all of us to see to it that our duty to country and state is fulfilled. It is noteworthy, Madam Speaker, that when pressed to do so, a significant number of people readily pay off their arrears. This suggests to me that they weren't unable to pay their taxes, they simply didn't do so. We understand that our approach differs from that of the previous administration, who disbanded the Revenue Collection Unit and allowed a select group of people not to pay their taxes. But we consider that approach offensive to sound fiscal management and basic principles of fairness. To implement this policy, Madam Speaker, we will introduce the following measures. We will establish a large taxpayer unit to improve compliance and revenue collection from the 100 or so businesses that account for $1.7 billion in taxes. We will implement a national revenue targeting center that uses technology to identify anomalies in revenue reporting amongst taxpayers, which will lead to more efficient audits. And we will improve revenue collection in the Family Islands by increasing staffing levels in revenue collection agencies in the Family Islands. In other measures, we'll introduce and implement an updated fee schedule for the registration of pleasure crafts to address chronic revenue underperformance in the marine sector. We want our state-owned enterprises to succeed, and we are determined to improve transparency, efficiency, and profitability in the way they operate. We have decreased the budget allocation for SOEs from the previous budget. We will also issue clear expenditure guidelines to SOEs to ensure transparency and financial responsibility in the conduct of their businesses, to ensure that it conforms with the national fiscal objectives. We'll also implement a plan to increase revenue by collecting dividends from state-owned enterprises. So it's our goal to ensure that they become profitable. As part of the package of broader measures we are adopting, we'll continue to reduce customs and excise duties rates to encourage investments. As much as has been achieved to revive abandoned relationships. I should repeat this one. As much as has been achieved to revive abandoned relationships and restore the reputation of the Bahamas on the world stage, we will reduce travel expenditure to a level at below fiscal year 29-20 levels. And we will further advance efforts to introduce a contributory pension scheme for the public sector employees to ensure that all can benefit upon retirement. Investment in infrastructure is a key method of promoting growth in the Bahamas. As well as providing much needed services for the Bahamian people, critical and key infrastructure are necessary for economic development. And so the government will continue to leverage private sector financing through public-private partnerships and continue to undertake projects such as roads, airports, development in various Family Islands. Major new projects already identified include road projects in Cat Island, Long Island, Eleuthera, and Exuma. Major airport projects in Cat Island, Exuma, Long Island, Grand Bahama, Bimini, and several other islands are also being planned. Madam Speaker, the high cost of living in the Bahamas is well known and experienced by everyone. In order to temper the effects, we've already increased the minimum wage, granted promotions across the public service, and in partnership with the labor unions, sought to secure better employment for working people. In this budget, we have allocated $4.7 million to continue an employment program in Grand Bahama. We have also provided for salary increases outlined in multiple public sector agreements benefiting police officers, defense officers, prison officers, social workers, and others. We are proud that we have ended years of uncertainty and disquiet within the labor movement by completing 18 union agreements. And we have signed a 3-year agreement to run with most of these unions to run from July 2022 to June 2025 to increase allowances and salary scales through a $40 million industrial union agreement. We have also allocated funding to the Ministry of Finance for a thorough evaluation of salaries in the public sector to ensure equitable compensation for the public servants. Madam Speaker, food security is an issue. The government has implemented various programs to strengthen food security over the medium term. For example, we have introduced the Golden Yolk Egg Program, which facilitated the purchase of chickens for domestic egg harvesting on a large scale. Going forward, we will continue to increase food security and maintain capital expenditure in agriculture. We will implement a new agriculture administration cadet program. We have set aside funding for the expansion of BAMC and other farmer markets in New Providence, and to support the supply of equipment to assist farmers in land development. We will fund a number of initiatives to directly increase local agriculture and fishing. We'll use greenhouse investments for local produce, cultivation. The fishing pot program trains fishermen how to make and use pots as a means of fishing. We will promote the citrus tropical orchard development in Andros, Keral, Elutra, and Abacoa.
Yes, sir.
And we will promote the hydroponic program and raised bed initiatives in primary schools to teach children a more efficient means of growing produce. And funds have been allocated to ensure those things occur. Madam Speaker, since coming to office, I have championed the cause of the Bahamas and other small island developing states, particularly ocean states around the world, on the need for the carbon-producing countries to do more to help us. While things are slowly but promisingly moving forward, we need to move at a pace to improve our state of readiness. And so the government, in collaboration with the Inter-American Development Bank, is executing an $80 million project aimed at mitigating the impact of climate change. Even though the Bahamas' carbon footprint is negligible compared to the industrialized countries, we are committed to doing what we can to reduce our carbon emissions. And so, as part of our focus on transitioning to renewable energy, we have allocated $22 million for the adoption of solar technologies on sites in Mequona, Inagua, Crooked Island, Acklins, and Long Key. Yes. We are already in negotiations to reduce the carbon footprint. We are already in negotiations to reduce the carbon footprint of PPL and make electricity more affordable. We are further negotiating a $20 million facility, a solar facility, to encourage the adoption of green technology among small and medium businesses. The work we have been doing over the past 1.5 years to develop a new carbon market continues apace. And we should realize the fruits of that in the first quarter of next year. Even small countries like ours have a role to play in helping to move the planet towards net zero. You know, the National Youth Guard. Madam Speaker, I'm especially pleased to announce today that we have provided funding in this budget for the National Youth Guard program. By investing in this program and the young individuals who successfully complete it, we are not only supporting their personal growth and development, but we are also investing in the future and security of our nation. Through this program, we are able to establish a strong and capable group of young individuals who are equipped to provide aid and comfort and support to both public and private agencies in times of emergency and disaster. This investment in our youth serves as an investment in the well-being and protection of our country as a whole. So many factors contribute to our individual sense of personal security. The things we need to secure our lives and livelihoods, so many things. In this budget, we are introducing a broad range of measures, specifically relating to education and skills, health and wellness, and housing and home ownership. Education is key. It is the number one path to success. And yet, if a young person is malnourished or suffering from an otherwise preventable condition, their life chances are greatly restricted. Similarly, lack of decent housing not only compromises the education potential for students, but the potential for work and stability for those with jobs. And so, we are introducing a number of measures linked to promoting a greater sense of personal security. And so, Madam Speaker, in order that our children can put aside thoughts of hunger and concentrate on their schoolwork, today I am pleased to announce that my government will be introducing a new national school breakfast program. Madam Speaker, hunger does not only afflict students. And because of this, we'll also establish a special food assistance program to provide funding for organizations operating feeding programs for vulnerable people. Continuing our efforts, Madam Speaker, from our last budget to promote better health and greater wellness among the Bahamian people, in this budget, we are providing funding to continue the development of a new health facility in Grand Bahama. To build a new hospital in New Providence. As well as continuing to improve the infrastructure for Family Island clinics. To make healthcare more affordable, We will consolidate national health insurance and the prescription drug plan into an overall health policy. The provision of health insurance is costly, but the government realizes that this is a necessary benefit for many employees. And so the government is aggressively taking steps to protect this benefit for as many employees as possible. Once these plans become more crystallized, more information will be provided. In particular, given some of the speculative commentary recently, I wish to make clear that members of the uniformed branches of our services will continue to benefit from insurance coverages. Yeah. And new members who are joining will still be eligible for subsidized dependent coverage. And finally, Madam Speaker, in relation to healthcare, in a first for the Bahamas, in relation to healthcare, Madam Speaker,
members,
in a first for the Bahamas, we will be supporting the creation of the first ever National Organs Transplant Program. I trust that this will become a life-saving benefit to many who depend on such generous donations for their survival. Home ownership. Madam Speaker, home ownership is the dream of many Bahamians, a dream that can be realized. However, many are currently struggling to achieve this dream because of elevated building costs, as well as the limited supply of housing stock, driving up home and property prices. While the government has no intention of policing the housing market beyond the necessary checks and balances, it is evident that some intervention is needed to assist those in need. For that reason, customs duty rates were lowered on select building materials to alleviate some of the construction costs of new homes. We are extending the first home exemption benefits for owner-occupied residents up to triplexes. Yes. So if 2 or 3 persons want to build a duplex or triplex, it could be siblings or just friends, and they can live in one and once they can live in it, they'll have the exemptions that any first homeowner will get. So we're introducing that now. To address the limited supply of houses, concessions for housing projects have been expanded to non-government entities for projects with a maximum value of $200,000 in construction costs per unit. Moreover, the government has made investments in a rent-to-own program. This budget includes funding to accelerate these efforts. This program holds significant importance for individuals and families looking to achieve home ownership but who face financial barriers. This rent-to-own program offers an alternative path towards acquiring a home by allowing tenants to rent a property with the option to buy it later, and with some of the rent going towards that purchase price. These potential homeowners will have the opportunity to demonstrate the ability to meet financial obligations through monthly rental payments before making a long-term commitment. This option not only fosters a sense of stability and pride for tenants, but also promotes home ownership, widely regarded as a cornerstone of wealth creation and community development. Madam Speaker, just yesterday, had an exciting video call with the students at the Forest Primary School in Exuma. Yeah. Forest Primary School in Exuma. I was happy to be on that call with them. Their excitement, enthusiasm, optimism was infectious. And I wanted to make special mention of them today. There was a different kind of excitement amongst the students. Of course, that excitement, these young primary school students, many of them wanted to be prime minister soon. And so we had to encourage them how to pass. And then I had a different kind of excitement amongst the students that graduated last week from the University of Bahamas. No doubt for many of them, the first move from academia and hopefully into the world of work. A striking feature of the graduating class was that Minister, about 80% of the graduates were female. We observed that last year as well. And it's been a continuing trend for many years, I'm advised. And given that the Bahamian population is fairly evenly split between males and females, it was noteworthy and disappointing that more of our young men are not taking advantage of the free university education which is on offer. We must make more active efforts to encourage them. I ask my colleagues here to join me in those efforts to encourage our young men to take up this free offer of education. My government has already increased the investment in education and will continue to do so. In terms of infrastructure, we have expanded the Bahamas BTVI to the Family Islands. In terms of education and skill development, we have increased teacher salaries by 15% and implemented a retention bonus scheme. To address the shortage in teachers, we have recruited 200 additional teachers' aides, and guidance counselors. To help recover the learning loss which resulted from the lockdowns during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have initiated the Find Every Child initiative, that's what we call it, right? And a national learning loss testing initiative, which are showing positive results. And we have launched the National Smart Start program in partnership with the Ministry of Education and the BTVI. Looking ahead at this budget, we will increase funding for BAMSI, and we will increase funding for BTVI. We will also increase funding to the Ministry of Education. As I said, Madam Speaker, I'm also pleased to announce that we have also allocated funding for a school for the creative and performing arts. Which takes us a step closer to fulfilling the dreams of many and fulfilling a key promise which we made during our election campaign. As a part of our commitment to investing in young people, sports, and the arts, we have also budgeted to host major international sporting events such as Grifter Swimming, Grifter Triathlon, and the World Relays. The hosting of these sporting events plays a crucial role in our Sports in Paradise initiative, as it not only celebrates athleticism, but also creates a platform for aspiring Bahamian athletes to shine. This in turn can lead to a plethora of opportunities and avenues for their future success. Madam Speaker, you may be aware of my long association with swimming, so it will come as no surprise that I'm very excited that we have made provision in this budget to construct a 50-meter pool in Grand Bahama. and to develop Family Island sports facilities. The facility in Cat Island is already near completion and serves as a benchmark for other facilities throughout the Bahamas. And our sailing has recently been proclaimed the national sports. We have set aside funding in this budget to develop it. At this point, champion. Trophy up there. At this point, I wish to acknowledge that in the aftermath of the pandemic, we do appreciate that numerous civic and non-government organizations are facing persistent challenges in resuming their usual operations. I should repeat this one. Madam Speaker, I wish to acknowledge that in the aftermath of the pandemic, we appreciate that numerous civic and non-governmental organizations are facing persistent challenges in resuming their usual operations. And so, in this budget, we contain increased allocations for independent schools and children's homes. This, combined with the increase in social services benefits, which was a feature of last year's budget, demonstrates this administration's commitment to assisting the most vulnerable among us. I'll now elaborate further on the fiscal projections for the fiscal year 2023-2024. As I alluded to earlier in this communication, the government is committed to following the methodologies and projections in its 2022 fiscal strategy report as closely as reasonably possible. Since the preparation of the 2022 fiscal strategy report, international lending conditions firmed, leading to higher than usual interest rates. As a result, amendments were made to accommodate higher spending on interest rates payments in the upcoming fiscal year. Therefore, the deficit as a percent of GDP for the upcoming 2023-2024 is 0.2% higher than the 0.7% deficit target set forth in the 2022 fiscal strategy report. Please note that despite this, the national deficit as a percentage of GDP remains subdued, as I mentioned earlier. Barring the advent of unforeseen developments, we are still on track to achieve a balanced budget by 2024-2025. The following outlines the fiscal plan for the upcoming year. Recurrent revenue is projected to be $3.316 billion. Recurrent expenditure is expected to be $3.085 billion, and the recurrent surplus is projected to be at $230.7 million. For the current year, we are projecting a recurrent deficit of $164.3 million, reflecting a $395 million change. Interest expense is projected at $612.7 million. And the surplus on the primary balance is expected to be $481.6 million in comparison to $68.4 million from the current fiscal period. Capital expenditure is projected at $364.6 million, a modest increase of $5.6 million. Capital revenue is projected to remain unchanged at $2.8 million, and the overall deficit, which excludes debt repayment, is projected to be $131.6 million. This projected deficit for the fiscal year 2023-2024 is a $389.5 million decrease from the current year's projected outturn and represent 0.9% of GDP. This is aligned with the targets laid out in the 2022 Fiscal Strategy Report and reaffirms the government's commitment to fiscal prudence. Madam Speaker, as I said at the beginning of this communication, our annual budgets are a cumulative effort. Even though we already see signs of progress, the full beneficial effects of the measures which we have already introduced will take several years to fully mature. We also understand that for those who are struggling with day-to-day challenges, they urgently need help and opportunity and support. And so we are also mindful to step in and step up to help to improve the lives of the Bahamian people. In setting the priorities of this budget, we seek to provide security in a number of meaningful and impactful ways. By continuing to strengthen our borders and fight against the scourge of crime, we will increase and improve our national security. By raising much needed revenue without adding new taxes, we can expand the range and quality of services and investment on which Bahamians rely. By also prudently managing our public expenditure and adhering to our debt management strategy, the public finances will become ever more stable. In helping to ease the burden of the cost of living, enhancing food security, diversifying the economy to expand the number of jobs and increase the potential for wealth creation, we will provide greater economic security for the Bahamian people. And by making ourselves better prepared and more resilient to the impact of climate change, improving people's life chances by investing in health, education, housing, and job opportunities, we can better secure the lives and livelihoods of all. And as we go forward, we must ensure that the rising tide lifts everyone, that none are forgotten or left behind. As a member of Parliament, representing a Family Island constituency, I was especially proud a few weeks ago when I attended the coronation in London and walked into Westminster Abbey behind a young woman from Makewana, young girl, 14 or 13, who carried a gold and black aquamarine flag. She hails from one of the least populated islands in our small country. And there she was, confident, marching forward, waving our banner high. It was a moment for me of great symbolism. This young lady from Iguana and me, this young boy from Old Bight Cat Island, stepping forward to represent our great country. Who would have thought it? Who would have thought it? This, Madam Speaker, is part of the great promise of independence that we should celebrate this year. I firmly believe that Bahamians can achieve greatly whenever we put our minds to it. What each of us needs is just an opportunity.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, with a greater sense of security afforded by this budget, I pray that the Bahamians everywhere will continue to lift themselves up and greet a brighter tomorrow. I am forever grateful to the people of Cat Island, Romkins, and Salvador, who have trusted and privileged me to represent them in this honorable house. May God continue to bless them as he continues to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.